What is up, everyone? This is the Freedom Club podcast. I am your host, Curt Mercadante, and before I get going, I'm going to ask you for one favor today. If you like today's podcast, if you've liked the podcast you've listened to in the past, I request one thing of you. If you're so inclined, wherever you're listening to this podcast, please go and leave us a positive rating and review. If you don't want to do that, please share our podcast, a link to the podcast on your Facebook page, on your Twitter, whatever it is, because we keep growing month after month, and it's because of people like you. And my mission is to save the world by helping individuals fight for freedom and fulfillment. This podcast is one of the tools in my arsenal I use to accomplish that vision. And the more people who listen to this podcast, the more people who can be saved, who can realize that they can actually design a lifestyle of freedom instead of being confined to a lifestyle by default. So thank you for being here. Please spread the word. Now, in today's episode, it's yet another episode where I feature my answer to some questions that were submitted by members of the Freedom Club community. Now, if you're not a member of the Freedom Club community, go to Facebook right now. I say this every episode. If you haven't done it yet, go to Facebook. Search for the Freedom Club community, click on it, answer the questions, join. You get to participate in live stream discussions, audio that you've heard on this podcast, interviews that you hear on this podcast. You can participate live, watch them live, ask questions live. So in today's episode, I answer a question that came from Judd. He said, how do I turn it up to 11? I said, turn what up to 11? He said, life. How do I turn life up to 11? You hear me talk a lot about that comfort zone of misery, and there are a lot of people on a scale of 1 to 10, they're languishing at a 4 or a 5, maybe even a 6. Now, even turning it up to a 7 will feel better. But Judd asks, I love his attitude, how can we turn it up to 11? My friends, I answer that question today. Listen today. Let's take some actionable steps starting today. Make today Freedom Friday if you're listening to this on the actual day in which it airs, Friday. Let's make today Freedom Friday and start turning our lives up to an 11. Here's today's episode.
Welcome to the Freedom Club podcast, where we strive to pull you out of your life of quiet desperation, out of your comfort zone of misery, and propel you into a life of freedom and fulfillment. And now, here's your host for this journey, international speaker and coach, and serial entrepreneur, Curt Mercadante.
Judd asks, how can I turn it up to an 11? And I said, turn what up to an 11? And he said, life. So I have something called the Freedom Index. And it's a list of 10 statements that I like to read off. And I have you judge each statement on how much you agree or disagree by marking it with a number 1 to 10. Is your health and fitness excellent? And I'm not just talking about your waistline or your weight. I'm talking about, are you on statins because you're making shitty nutritional choices? Are you on blood pressure medication because you're making bad choices? Are you constantly stressed out and so you feel like you need to take anti-anxiety meds? Maybe because there's underlying problems you haven't dealt with your lifestyle. Is your health and fitness excellent? Mark that from 1 to 10. Are your relationships excellent? There's nothing more important than relationships. And so if you're not fully aligned between your family, yourself, and your work, and you're only at a 5 or below on a scale of 1 to 10, then you need help with that. Do you go on at least 2 dates minimum per month with your spouse, your significant other, your partner, whatever? If not, at a minimum, you got to get on that. Do you find you have alignment in your life between family, self, and work? Do you find yourself fulfilled every day of the week and not just nights and weekends? Are you fulfilled in your job? These are some of the key questions I ask to determine if you're living the freedom lifestyle. And if you're at 5s, Judd asks, how do I turn it up to 11? If you're at 5s, I have a proven system and process that works. It's the 5 pillars of the freedom lifestyle. But you got to work them. You got to work them every damn day because consistency beats intensity. And I know some of you out there come out of the gate in January or, the first week of Q1 and you're like, I'm going to do it. And you do it for like 5 days and then you fall by the wayside because you don't have an accountability partner. You didn't invest in yourself. You don't have that clear process and system to make it happen. Because without that clear system and process in place, in which you're unleashing your superpowers, sorry, I have a cold today, defining your clear life vision and reverse engineering it so you have clear outcomes every day, every week, every month, every year that move you toward your vision and allow you to get in alignment and that state of flow every day. If you aren't living that and working it every day, you ain't going to get to an 11. Your relationships are going to suffer. Your health and fitness is going to suffer. Your mental and physical health are going to suffer. You're going to keep being trapped by workaholism. That's how you turn it up to 11. So when I ask you, what's the lifestyle you actually want to live? You proudly define it and then say, shit, we're going to get to work. We're going to reverse engineer it so I can start living that today. You know, if I'm 45 years old and I've only been doing sales for 20 or 25 years, hell, if I don't like it, I'm no longer going to define myself solely as a salesperson. I'm going to define myself by the lifestyle I want to live. I'm going to stop clearly defining work and career and then trying to shoehorn in my relationships and self-care. No. I'm going to reverse that from now on. I'm going to define my lifestyle. I'm going to clearly define how I want my relationships and my self-care to work. And then I'm going to find a career that fits into there. Then I'm going to find a career that moves me toward my vision. Start living a life of desire. Start living a life of want instead of a life of, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what's responsible. This is what's realistic. Because when you do the latter, when you confine yourselves to the latter, then you ask yourself, and you don't understand, how can I turn it up to an 11? Because you're living in that level of 5 and below where you're living a life by default. And if you're stuck in that rut, I know it is so hard to understand that you can actually live a lifestyle you desire. It doesn't take a ton of money. And it doesn't take more time or more hours in the day that all of us have. We all have the same amount of hours in the day. And yes, there is fear involved. Yes, it's scary. But you know what? If you try to do it alone, it's going to be tough. It's going to be damn tough. And if you don't have that system or process in place, I've put a system and process in place for myself and my clients. It's the 5 pillars of the freedom lifestyle. And it makes it easier for you to reverse engineer it and stay focused every single day. So Judd, that's how you turn it up to an 11.